start in a couple of minutes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today's topic is the untold cost of caregiving and why financial planning alone is not enough. This is a journey and a real caregiving story to help families prepare financially and emotionally. Before we begin, my name is Rohini, and I'm a advisor and a certified financial transitionist at International Money Matters. I work closely with families, helping them manage their finances across life transitions and work towards their long term goals. Today's session is a little different from our usual webinars. There are no slides, no product discussions, anything of that sort. What we are going to do today is, talk a little bit about a deeply personal topic, and this is something that most families might face at some point in time in their lives. It's about a caregiving journey and the real and the mostly unspoken journey in terms of caring either for our elderly parents or our loved ones. It's also about what it really means when life doesn't go as per our expectation. As financial planners, we often talk about the retirement numbers, the monthly income, expenses, inflation, and a lot of numbers, in terms of cost, etc. But what we have increasingly realized is that the financial preparedness alone is not enough. The emotional strain, the logistics, and the family dynamics often don't show up in the spreadsheets. Today, our intention is not to scare anyone, but to help families feel more aware, more prepared, and less alone. At International Money Matters, we have started incorporating long term care provisioning into our retirement planning, especially from the later stages in life. And often we assume something around 50,000 to 1 lakh in today's term for prolonged care. And honestly, the acceptance from the families is quite low. And many families tell us that this is kind of an overestimated number, or this may not happen to us. If it happens, we will kind of adjust in terms of cutting down our lifestyle, or we'll travel less, or we will not travel, and the things can be taken care of. But what we consistently hear from families who often face this and have lived this through this caregiving journey is that our assumptions are often underestimated and are far from reality. The gap between the assumption and what it's going to unfold is why today's conversation is very important. With us today is Mrs. Urmila Mukherjee, a senior retired HR leader and a valued client of International Money Matters. More importantly, she's someone who lived through the caregiving journey, not as a planner, but as a daughter and a caregiver. She has graciously agreed to share her personal journey in terms of giving, to her parents, and what she went through, what surprised her, and what she wishes families thought about earlier. Thank you so much, Urmila, for being here and for your willingness to share something so personal. To start with, if you can just, take us through this journey, how it started, what triggered, and, how it all began for your family.
Good afternoon, Rohini, and thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to share this very, very personal journey. And as you said very rightly, we are a family of five brothers and sisters. All of us are educated, doing very good jobs, etc. But we never ever thought that what happened to us could happen. So that is why I think when you said that, you plan a lot of.
Urmila, I think you went on mute. If you can unmute.
Hello.
Can you
Yeah.
hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so let me start again. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Rohini, for giving me this opportunity. And I know it's a very, very personal journey, and of course, I'm sharing it because I think it is extremely important. Because when we were not facing this, we thought that we had everything under control. For example, you see, we are a family of five brothers and sisters, one brother, four sisters, all of us doing exceedingly well in financial terms and otherwise. And my father retired as a very, very senior officer from a public sector undertaking, and he had 100% reimbursement, medical reimbursement, right? So we never thought that medical was an issue. We never thought that financials were an issue. We thought that it was all taken care of. Now, at the age of 91, my father was absolutely hale and hearty and fit. A couple of times they went during COVID to the hospital and all. Hospitalization was taken care of. Dad called up somebody came, somebody did everything. It was all fine. Medical reimbursement was very, very small amount. The medicines, monthly medicines, easily done, everything. And then my father started having a problem. He had a heart issue and he could not be left alone. So we hired an attendant 24/7. First, we tried to manage ourselves. Not possible. You have to take the gentleman to the toilet. You have to, wash him in the morning. Somebody has to be there to give him a bath. It was not happening because all of us were still working. And as I said, one of my brother was abroad. One sister was abroad. Three sisters are here in Delhi. One is a doctor, full-time job. One was working with NIFT, full-time job. I had just barely retired. Was still trying to, find some jobs to do. So we've hired a caretaker, and we had not thought about the cost of the caretaker, right? At that point of time, it was costing us about 30,000 rupees a month as the caretaker, and it was okay. We were moving along. and the medical reimbursement was still happening. Then, and after 1 year, my father could not sign. My father's memory was not as good as it was. And we were still struggling with these medical reimbursements with the organization, but they were not a very high amount. It was okay. Something came, something didn't come. Then what happened was that my mother also suffered a stroke. Okay. And then the real problem started, because what happened was that my father was, as I said, was a financial expert. Everything was in order. Everything was in joint name. Everything was written down. There were spreadsheets. We had no problem knowing where the money was. We had no problem with the banks. We had no problem with anything. But nobody could sign those papers. The nomination did not kick in because my mother was still alive, but my mother had a stroke. My mother could not sign the papers. The joint signatures went for a toss. The lockers were all closed. We could not open them, etc. So my brother came down. He was the nominee. It took him almost 6 to 8 months to get all these things sorted out where we could start getting the money out. But apart from that, the fact is, like I just said, the money was there, right? But we did not know how to process this money and get it back from the organization. Believe it or not, August 23, my mother had a stroke. We got the monies in January 25. Okay. So if we did not have the financial wherewithal to carry it through, we would not have been able to. That is number one. Number two, the reimbursement scheme, when you say that, oh, 100% reimbursement, you don't really get into the nitty-gritties of what is 100% reimbursement, right? So 100% reimbursement is medicines, 100% reimbursement is cashless hospitals. They deduct something and all right. But they don't give you money for attendance. They don't give you money for physiotherapy. Even if they give, they'll give you like 400 rupees. Believe it or not, my mother has been having this physiotherapy sessions since August 23. And they costed us at that point of time 2,000 rupees a day. This went on for almost a year and a half. It's only now when she's a little better that the expenses have come down a little bit. And the 100% reimbursement scheme, so to say, gives us some 400 rupees a day, which is also only for 2 months or 3 months. So what I'm saying is that what you said very rightly, that when you're doing financial planning, you think that you have it all under control. I'm telling you, there wasn't even an iota of doubt in our minds about the medical expenses for the parents. We said this is taken care of. 100% reimbursement, we don't have to worry. Then comes the logistics of it. So when my dad is okay, when my dad is still in his, he knows the people, etc. One call, everything gets done. 1.5 years, 4 visits to the organizations. I'm trying. My sister, who's a doctor, is trying. Everybody is trying. Can you believe we could not get the reimbursements out? And this is a very very prestigious undertaking, government organization. And it's not that they don't want to help you, but the rules are just so tight, the rules are so fixed that it is just impossible. So nobody had ever really got into those rules. So you're planning, but you're not planning. So that is one very very important thing which I wanted to mention. And then comes this issue about attendance. So then my mother needs 2 attendants, 24/7 she needs 2 attendants, 25,000 rupees. So that comes to 50,000 rupees. One attendant for my father comes to 30,000 rupees. And then you have to manage all of them, right? Somebody's coming, somebody's going, somebody does not want to come today, somebody's got some problems. Food has to be cooked, so you have to have a cook, because you have to also cook not only for your parents, you have to also cook for all the people who are there, the supporting staff which is there. So now you're talking about expenses not only in terms of the medical, you're also talking in terms of expenses of the household. So which was from 2 people or 3 people, now it suddenly goes up to 6 people, 7 people. So you have a cook, you have a driver, you have a cleaner, you have 2 people for my mother, you have 1 person for my father, you have physiotherapists who are coming in and going out. So now the key is who manages all this, right? There is nobody to manage. Now my father is ill, my mother is ill, who manages? So, okay, like I said, 5 brothers and sisters, we all decide that we're going to do what we call loosely as a shift duty. So we will come and we will go, somebody will come, somebody will go. Extremely difficult, extremely difficult. And what was extremely difficult was also the fact that your parents are in pain, they are suffering, and there is nothing that you can do about it. And you have to constantly, you won't believe it. The first time that it happened, I was there for almost 2 months and my blood pressure shot. I never thought I was the kind of person who can have stress. But just the stress of people who are ill around you, that emotional burden which you carry, that guilt which you carry, because you just don't know what to do. You keep thinking all the time, is there something that I'm missing? You call up people, you call up doctors. So I think that it is extremely important to understand that at that point of time, what is it that you build around you in terms of non-financial services? if you know what I mean. So you need to have people who are there with you. You need to have people who will support you. You will need to have people who will help you, not only in your daily day-to-day life, but also people who will be helping you with the organizations, etc. So when you're talking about non-financials, that is the first thing that I would like to say, right? The second thing which I would like to say over here is, we are five brothers and sisters. I already said that we're all, doing our respective jobs and all. So you really need to build a consensus as to how you're going to deal with the situation, right? Because you see, there will be some, like I said, one sister who's working, she cannot come. She cannot come and stay. One sister who's got small children, she cannot come and stay. One brother who's abroad, one sister who's abroad. So what I'm saying is, even though you're five of you and all of you are wanting to do the best for your parents, it is extremely difficult if you have not thought about it, if you've not communicated with each other, you have not communicated with your parents about it as to what is it that they want if something goes wrong. And it's an extremely sensitive topic. Extremely sensitive topic. You cannot ask your mother or your father that, listen, buddy, when you're not well, what do you want us to do? So what do you do? So you really need to decide who's in charge. Another thing which comes up is when somebody is suffering, like my parents were alone when my mother had a stroke. Who takes them to the hospital? They're living alone. Who takes them to the hospital? So do you have a setup? Do you have a backup? Do you have somebody around them? Or have you long term thought about it and said that, okay, at this certain age or at this point of time, we are going to either move in with them or they're going to move in with us, or we're going to find some kind of a solution. So I think extremely important to address these issues before they happen. You see what I'm saying? Because once it happens, it is very difficult.
Yeah,
So
I think that's a lot to go through. I'm really sorry, that your family has
no,
to go through all this. And it does take a lot of strength and courage to kind of go through all this, right?
I had support. I mean, like, you see, why it comes, why I think I'm being said as the primary caregiver is because people were coming and going, but I was in Delhi, right? So I was in touch with everybody. I was in touch with the doctors. I was in touch with the organization. I was in touch with the support staff. I was in touch with everybody. I was trying to manage all of this and everything. So what I'm saying is that money, according to me, of course, it's extremely important, which you all as experts will make sure that the money is there. But anybody who thinks that, there is enough, there isn't. Now, also, another thing is this, that you see, at any with the kind of longevity that we're having, this could also be at two-tier, right? I may also need help tomorrow. Now I'm also, reaching that stage. So my parents need help. Now my mother-in-law's fallen down, she's broken a bone. So now I'm also looking after mother-in-law. So all the things which I was talking about my parents now apply to my mother-in-law also, that you need an attendant, you need somebody who'll take care of her, somebody who'll, be with her all the time, to make sure that she's okay. So that means that at any given point in time, you can actually be looking after two or three people, right? So in terms of not only medical, in terms of all the other emotional baggage which comes with it. Yeah.
So, what was the most draining part in this? Was it, taking care of the whole logistics? Because financially, like you said, I think at least some part of his majority of that is taken care of.
See, financial, what I'm saying is that actually it wasn't even though we had a 100% reimbursement scheme, honestly speaking, we would have got what? But 20% of what we were spending. Because you see, you get medicines. Medicines are okay, but they are not under so many, like my mother and my father, both were not under such a lot of medication. It was not like they were suffering from any very major disease. It was just old age and, a little bit here and there. And, so apart from the medicines, the hospitalization was not there in any case, except for 2-3 days when my mother had a stroke. But I think most important was this physiotherapy and this attendance. So, like I said, 2,000 rupees a day, it's a lot of money. And especially if you kind of multiply it in a whole year, so it's 365 into 2,000 rupees. So you don't think that this is the kind of money that you need. And you don't want to go down on that money, because if you go down, then she'll never be able to walk. She'll never be able to sit down. She'll never be able to talk properly. She needed some 4 or 5 kinds of, interventions. So what do you do? So in fact, I have a friend right now whose her mother has also suffered from a stroke, and she was saying that, everything else is all right, but how do we manage this physiotherapy? So 2,000 rupees, and then you need a car of the person, because most of them you can't do it at home because they do all those neuro things and all. So you have to take them to the center. So you need a car, you need a driver, you need somebody who will hop on with them, take them over there, bring them back. So the whole thing is, I think, very logistic nightmare.
And
Yeah.
all these things often don't come, right? I mean, like families do go through when they are going through it, but often it's mostly less spoken, but then it's kind of draining to whatever that. Uh,
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And you see, you can't speak about it because they are parents, right? And you
yeah,
want to look after them.
yeah,
So when I'm talking about this also, it's not that I am saying that, oh my God, I didn't want to do it, right? I did it
definitely.
and I
Yeah.
was not, and I will not say I was happy doing it in the sense that nobody's happy to having parents who are not well, but I mean, it was okay. I did it and that was it. But honestly speaking, if we had to go back when my father and mother were both perfectly all right, I think one would have found out a long-term solution as to what is it that they want to do. And another very important point is, Rohini, that you see what happens is between want and need. Parents will say that, oh, we don't want to shift homes, we don't want to do this, we don't want to do that, right? Parents will say that we're perfectly capable of looking after our finances, we're capable of running the home, etc., which is all true. But one little thing, and that whole thing is like a house of cards, it just falls down. And if you've not thought about it, I'm telling you, the first day that it happened, believe it or not, when my mother was a very, very capable person. So even though my father was ill and we were all, staying there, not staying there, but it was not like that we had to be there 24/7 because mother was there. So, you kind of came and went. But when my mother had a stroke, none of us were in town. And it was such a nightmare because you could call people, I called my son, somebody called somebody, people rush from all over and all. So if you don't, fortunately for us, genuinely fortunately for us, I belong to a joint family and a lot of people are here. So, you can actually pick up the phone and call up people, somebody or the other will rush. So you need to decide this before this happens. That in case of emergency, who do I call? In case of emergency, who's the person who's going to come? Who's the person who's going to take them to the hospital? Who's the person who's going to fill in those bills? Who's the person who's going to connect with the organization? You get my point. So just thinking happily, which we did all the while, that they are covered under a medical reimbursement scheme. We don't have to worry. When money is there, nothing going to happen, etc. Doesn't work. So 1.5 years, not a single paisa came from the organization. We could not touch the banks for 6 months because my mother's signatures were not there, and my father obviously could not sign.
Oh, that's a pretty long period to manage.
Yes, yes, it was. It was.
So
So,
have
so
you
when you
thought about like when you started, let's say, did you imagine this is how a caregiving journey would look like? Have you thought about it earlier when you've
no,
planned for yourself?
not at all. Like I'm saying, not we didn't even think about the money.
Yeah.
My father always said that I have 100% investment scheme. My father was so meticulous, you'd be surprised. Everything was written down, with nominations and everything where the bank accounts were, how much money was there, everything. He all just was cruising along. He said, okay, it's okay. We all know what it is. My brother is also in finance. My brother also knew. All of us are, doing a job and everything. We never thought that it was going to be a problem. We just thought it was like, if they fall ill, then we just when the company will pay for it, and that's going to be that. But didn't work out like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And what are
So
the family dynamics like? Often I've also, hear that from clients that sometimes the responsibilities also fall on one person in the family or two persons. But in your case, looks like I think there's a pretty good dynamics, right? Is there something that you would want to talk about that?
see, what I'll say is that yes, we are fortunate because even the extended family was like lending a hand when we needed to. Like for example, when I was with my mother, incidentally, my father passed away in 20 last year in August. No, last year my father passed away. So in October. So my mother was all alone, and then obviously after that, in fact, since she had the stroke, we've not left them alone even for a single day. But what happened was that my mother-in-law fell down and she broke a bone and she had to be taken to the hospital. So I had to rush from there to my own house. And then, but fortunately, like I said, there was somebody so I called up and the person came and he was with my mother. But yes, there are people who will take more responsibility. There are people who won't take. People who are tied by their own circumstances that they can't take. Like if, for example, if my sister is working and she's has to travel, then she has to travel. She's not going to give up a job. I was looking for a job, like I said, when my father became ill, but then I gave up looking for a job because I said it doesn't work. Somebody has to be there to look after the parents. And yes, some people will throw in more weight, some people will not. But Rohini, the way to look at it is I feel that they are your parents, right? Supposing you were the only child, then what? Supposing there wasn't anybody else, then what? You would not turn them out into the streets and say that, okay, now look after yourself. So it's entirely up to you. And so in fact, somebody was telling me a very interesting story. He said that, his friend told him that, oh, I'm very lucky because my brother is looking after my parents. So he said, I turned around and said, no, your brother is not looking after your parents. Your brother is looking after his own parents. Why would he look after your parents? He's not. He's not into the charity business that he'll go around looking after other people's business. He's looking after his own parents. So that is where I think you need to think it through. That if nobody else looks after them, then if you are there and you're capable, then you look after them. As simple as all that. And like you said, if you're lucky, then you have people around you who will help you out in that journey. Another thing, I would like to stress upon when all this is said and done about the logistics and managing, people coming, going, and everything. Managing your own self. I learned it genuinely the very hard way. You get so tied up with this whole thing. And, like I have a cousin whose mother expired. She was ill for about 4 or 5 years and she's expired now. And even after 4 years, he says, I get up in the night thinking that she's calling out to me even after 4 years of going away. So what I'm saying is that when you're there, you constantly keep thinking, oh my God, I'm going to miss it. Something going to happen and she's going to yell out to me and I will not be able to listen. And you're constantly in that stress and you can't leave it. And then they are also, very insecure. Like my mother would say, oh, don't go, whatever. So what I'm saying is that you forget in this whole thing that you also need to look after yourself. Extremely important. So you see, I was a person who loves to go for walks and I can do my jigsaws and I can do my crosswords, etc., sitting at home. But can you imagine for 2 whole months, I did not even step out of the house. And in today's world, with all these people who deliver at home, you generally don't even need to go out for important things or normal things. So I suddenly discovered that, even when my family was saying that, there is something happening here, and I don't know, how can I come? I can't leave them. And every time you'd want to go, your mother would cling on to you and say, don't go. So, you also need to differentiate between what is it that they want and what is it that they need. And in between them, and in between that want and need, you are there. And you also need to figure out what is it that you need to do to kind of keep your sanity alive and not be under this constant stress. Yeah.
Wow. That's too much, right? I think there are a lot of elements, right? Not just the money part, but
Yeah.
burnout and the
Yes.
emotional stress, the whole family dynamics. It's quite a lot to kind of think through and handle, right?
But Rohini, what I feel is that if I had to go back and do it, and in fact, I'm talking about the first year when my mother had 23 when she had the stroke. After that, honestly speaking, once you realize that this is how it needs to be dealt with, it's okay, and you have to tell yourself it's okay. So you can go out for a movie once in a while. There are people to look after her in the house. You can call people over for lunches, for dinners, for tea. You can step out for an hour, do something. So I think after that, it became a little easier. Also, because it becomes long term, then you have to find your solutions. Well, like you said, you completely burn out. So you need to find your solutions. And so after that, it was okay. I mean, it was not so stressful. Like today, also, it's not so stressful that I have to constantly go and sit next to her. I think initially, when it happens, you're so taken aback. You just don't know what's happening. That you're constantly, you are there and you don't want to make a mistake and all kinds of things. So I think in the beginning itself, you need to kind of have this conversation with yourself. You need to have this conversation with your brother and sisters. If you have people who are around you, get a consensus. What is it that you want to do? And for example, my mother said that don't take me to the hospital, right? So all of us said, okay, not take you to the hospital, it's all right, after the stroke. when she had a second stroke. And when she had the second stroke, I was standing there and I saw her having a stroke. And my first reaction was, I took her to the hospital, right? So after she came back, she's telling me, why did you take me to the hospital? You had promised that you won't take me to the hospital. So I told my brother and sisters, I said, listen, buddies, when she's having a stroke, what do you want me to do? I can't just stand there. So it's very easy to say that, don't do this and don't do that, or do this and do that. But when it actually happens, that is the time when you really need to take a decision. And I'm telling you, you cannot take this decision that I will not take my mother to the hospital. She can suffer or whatever it is. So I'm saying that you need to build this consensus. You need to talk to your siblings. You need to talk to the caregivers. You need to figure out how it is going to happen. And the monies, you all know the monies. Who's going to handle the money? Where is the money coming from? I'm telling you, we were very fortunate that my brother had the money, and or all of us. And I mean, there was no problem. Otherwise, can you imagine 2 years? How do you manage 1.5 years of spending? Like I said, that 2,000 plus 1,000 plus 1,000, so 4,000, 5,000 rupees, and this is without the other expenses of the staff, the supporting staff, like the cook, the driver, the cleaner, the food. You know, I mean, it may not sound much, but it it really amounts to extras.
No, I think I definitely understand because a lot of times these costs are not considered. So when we
Yes.
talk about the long-term care with the families, we consider the nursing and other parts to it. And then
Hmm.
we also speak about this, but then first of all, the nursing part itself is not, usually acceptable for the families, right? And if that happens, we'll take care, that maybe I'll move to a retirement home kind of a setup at a later stage that will have kind of facilities, or maybe I will cut down on my travel. So, I will not travel. So then that will kind of take care. So when we kind of insist that, first of all, these costs itself are inflating between 8
Yes.
to 10%
Yes.
and higher. And then on top of this, you have these additional costs which you just brought
Yes.
to our discussion today. So it's going to be a big number. And when we consider retirement, right, for ourselves, if we want to have this kind of a provision when we plan, for our long-term requirements, and if this gets missed out, it's a very big gap that's going to build up, right?
Oh yes, it is. And you see, you're used to a certain lifestyle. Now it's very easy to say that I look after my mother and I look after my father. I'm telling you, it is not possible. It is not possible. You have, but there's one room my father was there, one room my mother was there with a stroke patient, and my father was, he had this heart condition and everything, but he had no problem with mobility. In 1 minute, he'd be out of the room and floating around the house. So you literally had to, grab hold of him and keep him in the room because he would fall down and things like that. So you can't, even if you want to and you think that you can do it, it is physically just not possible. It's just not possible. And we are not trained. We are not trained. I cannot lift my mother up. I find these little girls, thin girls, 5 feet, nothing, and happily lifting my mother. And I try, and I just can't do it. I haven't learned, right? I don't know how to. So it sounds all very nice that I can do this and all. And like you said that, people say that they will not travel. Fine, you don't travel, but you still go out. And once in a while, you'll want to go for a movie. You'll want to go out and, eat out and do something. I don't know. Go for a walk. I'm telling you, my mother would cling on to me and she said, no, 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 don't go. I'm so scared if you're going to walk. And you can see me from the window. I'm out there. You can yell out to me. But you need to do all of that. So you can say that I'm not going to do it. But if you don't do it, believe you me, your sanity is going to go for a toss. You have to do all of that also. You cannot stop living. You cannot stop living. Yeah.
So, any other surprising elements that you've come across? Like you said, there are certain elements like these physio cost, etc., that were like surprising elements for you, which was like a bigger cost. Anything else that you can recollect? It could be, something related to money or not related to money, but
And see, the one thing which I really think is about this getting your reimbursements.
mm.
So you may have an insurance plan for medical, you may have everything. Do you know the system? What is your entitlement? How much money are you going to get? What is going to be the process? See, we did not get the money not because the company did not want to give us the money, whatever was the entitlement. but the process was not right. So they kept sending us the bills back. We kept sending them back. They would say, okay, no, there is this one mistake, and we would rectify it. And then they would say, no, 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 there's this other mistake. And in between, some bills got lost because you're not supposed to go and hand them over personally, so they're going to go by mail. So I think the biggest learning that we had, honestly speaking, was only in two. One was that even though you think that you have 100% reimbursement, how are you going to get that money? How? You must understand that, and who is going to get it for you? And now that we've got into this, there are a couple of people that we know. The husbands have passed away and the wives are there. And she was saying, she said, I just don't claim any money because I don't know how to. So even though the company is giving it to you, she says, I just don't know how to. So then we were telling her, we said, oh God, we're so sorry. Now that we've become experts, we'll come and, send us your bills. We will try to see if we can get them out. So most important, the thing which really hit us, and I know I'm harping on it, but all of us in jobs, all of us know how to do it. I myself have worked in the public sector. I know how the bills have to be submitted. Even then, we did not know their procedures and their rules, and we got lost. And then 2,000 rupees, they're giving you 400 rupees. You thought that they would give you, and then they give you only for 2 months. Then they don't give you after 2 months. Nobody thought that they don't give you after 2 months. You are just happily thinking that, oh, it is okay. And my father also always thought that 100% reimbursement. Oh, I worked all my life, I've got 100% reimbursement. So I think that was one big learning. And then the second learning was this family dynamics, which you just talked about, that who takes care, who's the primary caregiver, who's there when things are required to be done.
I think a lot of times also this whole, you know, medical insurance, a lot of times we also hear from clients that we have about 1 CR cover more, and it will take care of a lot of cost. But some of these costs that we spoke about today, right? For example, the attendant, care facilities, and maybe renovating home to kind of take care of the care
Yes,
or for ourselves at a later point.
yes,
All
yes,
these will not get covered in your
they won't get.
regular insurances, right? So typically the way we look at least in terms of the financial side of this whole part, we also take care of creating a provision for some of these costs
Yeah,
apart from your the regular requirements. I think that is kind of, I mean, talking to people who actually go through such journeys, it
yeah.
becomes even more important for us to kind of put a little bit more focus, and then bring out that awareness to the families, and especially to the families who are thinking that will not happen and then will take care of. That
Mm.
something is very, very important, right?
Yes. My father till 91, he was completely in charge of everything. We just never thought that it would come to a stage where he will not be able to sign and my mother will not. My mother will have a stroke. Even if father had something, we thought that mother will take care. So I think as financial experts, extremely important to know that what happens to the money. The money is there, right? The money was there. It's not that the money was not there, but we just couldn't access the money. We just couldn't access the money. And I mean, it
You
was
will
just.
also have to manage the liquidity piece, right? I mean,
That's what
in
I'm saying.
to
That's what I'm
manage
saying.
the money, and then the whole liquidity and how will you take care of those short term,
Mhm.
like 1 year, 2 year, and that along with your regular day to day. That
Yes,
that
it
is
this it is a
definitely a
huge
big.
challenge, and I'm telling you, it would have been a bigger challenge if we did not have money between us. I just don't imagine how you can, how you would take care of your regular expenses. Regular expenses, like I've already counted about a lakh of rupees is extra, suddenly become extra, and then let's not forget, everything else which comes with that. The
Yeah,
food, the electricity, the water, everything increases, right? Because
correct,
there are now, instead of two people, there are six people or seven people in the house. So,
correct. And more so that now we are talking about elderly parents, but it can so very well happen to us. And let's say people who are
yes,
in their 30s, 40s, they are planning, let's say this happens at a later stage, 70, 70, 80, whatever the stage. If that happens, that's gonna be such a big cost, keeping this inflation in
yes, yes,
aspect
yes.
considered. So it's going to be very, very challenging if we don't start talking and planning about it, at least in terms of the financial aspects of it, right? And then also maybe have conversations with families in terms of the softer aspects of it. But I think
Yeah.
both of those angles are quite important to take care of ourselves, because we would want to also have those, right? And a lot of families that we meet, they don't want to depend on children, uh, you know most times at this point in time that we meet.
That's very easier said than done. My parents are not dependent on us. I've been telling my parents, my brother said that you should switch to Switzerland some 20 years ago. They didn't want to switch. I've been telling my parents, come and live with me. I've got a nice place. But they don't want to shift. So it's very easy to say that, I'm not going to shift and I'm not going to, and nobody wants to shift, right? I can understand that also. The place that they come from, they've been living in the same house for so many years. They don't want to shift. But I'm saying that's what I said, that you have to build this consensus when they're all right. Then what happens? What do you want us to do? You know? And honestly speaking, my son and my daughter-in-law, because there was so much happening, that my daughter-in-law actually came home one day, one-on-one, and she says, I want to ask you, what is it that you want us to do? He said, because if we are living a life like this, and you want to live a life over here, and we are 30 kilometers apart from each other, he says, how do you expect us to do it? So please tell me now, what do you want to do? And your first reaction is that no, 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 I'm not going to leave my house, right? Now you do what you want to do. So now, even if she's 30 years old and she's got a whole career ahead of her, and I'm 70 years old, and I don't know how my life is going to go. My thing is that, okay, you come and look after me over here. But I'm telling you, you really, 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 this is one aspect which I will tell everybody, that please talk to your parents, please talk to your children, please figure out, because it can happen to anybody. And you
How
don't want to ruin your children's life, right? You don't want to ruin your children's life. I would not like my daughter-in-law and my son to give up their jobs and come and look after me if I was ill, right? Even if I had all the money in the world, would you really want that to happen to your children? Sorry, you were saying something.
No, I'm saying, I think in your case, I've also seen this where, like, either parents don't want to depend on kids, right? And that's the common thing. And now, if it happens to parents, and then you want parents to relocate, or you want to relocate, it's not an easy
It's not.
decisions, right? I mean, how do you even start these conversations with the family, be it your parents, be it your children, be
Yes,
it among wife and husband, right? So how do you even
yes,
start? Or is there
yes,
anything that you would
yes.
want to talk about in terms of, like, how do you even start these conversations and navigate?
I know it is very difficult, but you don't have a choice. And I'm telling you, Rohini, honestly speaking, this I'm talking about when I think that I was very fortunate. My husband was a huge support. He never said that, why are you going and living for months on end with your mother, right?
Mm.
I was living months on end. In the 2, 3 years, almost now 4 years, I think I must have spent at least 2.5 to 3 years at my mother's place, because my brother keeps coming, going, mother says she keeps coming and going. Never did he turn around and say. But I'm saying that I wish, and okay, another aspect which comes in is that my brother is supposed to be what should I say, the heir. You're, as a daughter, you're not supposed to be there. So he's supposed to take the decisions, right? But he's not here, right? I am here, and I'm number two. So, he's elder to me, so I'm number two. Now, I cannot go and pick up this conversation with my parents that, okay, now if something happens to you, what are you going to do? Right? And that was the onus of my brother. But my brother doesn't have a choice because my brother is not in the country. So you're absolutely right. How do you start this conversation? Because the answer is very clear. My mother will turn on, so you should shift to Delhi, and that's going to be the end of the story, right? So,
Yeah.
so
These are very difficult conversations, right? Especially, when none of those things happen. And typically, when you
yes,
are not in that mess, it is
yes,
even more challenging to even think of such a decision. So, better to start some of these conversations early, either with your planner in terms of, financial
yes,
part, and with your family in terms of the whole logistic part and
yes,
how you
yes,
handle this. And
correct.
we also now have nuclear families, right? So, it's even more important to
Yes,
think through how we are going to navigate this piece with these nuclear families, and also kids mostly going abroad, studying there, settling down there. That's another aspect that's going to come up, right? So definitely you need some of these facilities for yourself, and if that needs a financial assistance, it's better to start thinking and planning and speak to the planner, see, what
Yeah,
all you can do, and figure out the cost and keep a provision. So if it's even if it's not going to cause, I mean, even if the number looks bloated at this point in time, at least when you know there is something, you will kind of work towards it eventually. Um,
really. I think it is extremely important what you're saying, because I keep saying, coming back to it, we never thought that we are going to have a problem like this. Never thought. And honestly speaking, in this whole setup, money has not been an issue for us because we had the
Right.
money. If I shudder to think what would have happened if we didn't have the money or the provision was not there. Genuinely, I just don't know how one would have managed.
Right, right. So
And
any, yeah,
nuclear families is an issue, and that's why I'm saying again and again that you need to focus as to who's going to do it, who's going to be there. And when you're talking about this money thing, and you can say that okay, I'll shift you into senior living and everything, but you may not be in your senses to take that decision.
yeah.
I can turn on today and say that okay, I don't want to burden my children, and if something happens to me, when I become old and sick, and I'm going to shift it to a place. But genuinely, will I be in a position to take that decision at that point of time? So is it that I choose a place now and keep it and tell my children, okay, now if something happens to me, you take me over there? Then my children will think that I'm foolish, right?
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
here we are, we may take care of her, and here she is saying, find yourself a senior citizen place or whatever it is.
Yeah.
There are no correct answers,
Yeah.
but I think yes. So money is communication. Who's going to do what? Very difficult. I just came back from Kolkata yesterday, and I have a old Masi of mine over there, and her daughter lives in Bangalore, and she keeps coming every month. Every month she comes for a month, right? So I was telling her, why don't you shift? And you know what she told me? She says, oh, but I have heard of lots of people who, when they leave their house and goes away, then they die very quickly. And I said, and who told you that? And she says, no, you don't know. Anybody who leaves their home in old age and goes away, then they die. So I said, and what about your daughter? She's had to leave her job. She's actually left her job because she said,
Hmm.
I can't do it any longer, that every month on month I have to come for a month. I can't do a job. So she was telling me, I've left my job. So I was telling her, I said, and what about your daughter? She left her job. She says, it's okay. But it was in any case, she's going to retire in a couple of years' time. So how does it make a difference if she, Arey bhai? You know? So this fear that if we leave our homes and go away.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if I have to really take a lesson from that, I come back to that you have to do it when they're all right, when they're
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So they don't have all these fears and insecurities, and
Yeah.
they themselves plan that okay, this is what you need to do when you're
Yeah.
happy,
Yeah.
and not when they're really ill.
Absolutely. I think that's very, very important.
Mm.
As a transitionist, I can also see, typically when you go through a lot of these changes, right? It can be anything, any change, your decision making goes for a toss, right? Because
Yes.
you're kind of either towards a narrow focused kind of a thing,
Yeah.
looking at that problem, and then your solution is not
Correct.
focused, in a 360-degree view. I think that is where it's very important to kind of start thinking, talking, and then also looking at some of these aspects when you're working for your long-term goals and
Yes.
needs, right? So
Yes.
I think thank you so much for taking us
My
through your
pleasure.
journey, and
Mm.
I'm
I'm
sure it wouldn't have been an easy one. And I wish all the strength to you.
No,
To
thank you so much. And it is not as bad as
yeah,
it sounds, also. But I just think that you need to think about it.
right.
Everybody needs to think about it, get their act into place before it happens, so then they're not stumbling and struggling and trying to make things bad. Like honestly speaking, if I had known that all kind of problems there, I would have gone through the rules, the medical rules, and been ready with it. And that would have
Yeah,
been that, right? I mean, it
yeah.
was as simple as all. But then one didn't, and then like you said very rightly, when you're in that situation, then you just don't have that kind of time or the energy or the wherewithal to start from scratch. And you say, okay, now I'm going to do this. You just think, ho jayega, because you need it to happen. Yeah,
Right. So thank you so much, Urmila. We'll just open up for questions.
yes, right.
In case audience want to kind of ask any questions, feel free to kind of drop it in the chat box or ask. if you have any questions. And also, we've just put a QR code. If you can just scan and share your valuable feedback for us to kind of, improve in terms of the whole webinars that we are doing. Looks like there is a question in the chat box. Hope Urmila can shed light on how she is planning for her old age, using her learnings of managing her parents to ensure she is better placed to manage life in old age.
Okay. So I just touched upon it that my daughter-in-law came and she had a chat with me, and I think that was very brave of her. And she said that, "What do you want to do?" And I live in North Delhi. She lives in South Delhi, and she said that it's not possible for us to look after you. And I agreed, and I said that yes, we will plan. We will try to shift in the next couple of years. We will see if we find. Let's look for an alternative as to somewhere near your house if that is what you want. And if that is not what is feasible, if they get a transfer somewhere out or if they're not going to be in Delhi, then yes, we have an alternate. We are thinking of an alternate place where we want to shift, which is going to be in a community living kind of a place. Right now, I live in a house which is isolated. I mean, it's a standalone house. So move into a community living place where somebody will look after us, hopefully. And of course, the monies. I mean, I also, incidentally, I also have a 100% reimbursement scheme. So I keep sending all these schemes to my children. I said, please understand what is the reimbursement, which are the hospitals which are impaneled. So I keep them completely in tune. I have all my numbers of my company. I have all my cards, copies of my cards, etc., which I have given to my children. And I mean, they're nice children because my son says that, why are you talking about a senior living when I'm going to be in town? It's just that you have to come and stay somewhere close by or somewhere with me. So I think I'm wherever the children tell me to shift in.
Sure. Thanks, Urmila. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah.
So there is another question for me actually. So IMM should talk about senior citizen living, medical insurance that covers attendant cost and physiotherapy, etc. For folks who are now thinking of their lives when they themselves face such issues, we are taking care of parents, but how do we take care of ourselves in our old age? Thanks for this question. This is very important. We've been talking about this long-term care in our retirement planning since a few years now. We a lot of times the medical insurances do not cover these costs. And hence it's even more important. Typically, medical insurance cost your regular, hospital bills, etc., but not your attendant or like a physio cost, etc. So which is where it is very important to kind of keep a provision for your long-term care, which can cover some of these costs which are not covered by the medical insurance. We have three layers to the whole medical piece. One is a lump sum provision, other one is a medical insurance, and the third one is the long-term care on a monthly basis that kind of cover this. So it's very important. To have this, have a more realistic number, even if the number looks bloated, because the inflation is quite twice than your general inflation. So it's important to keep that, and and start thinking and planning about it when you are young, so that you have more room for you to kind of plan and get there. So yeah, I think that's something that we can we can do it for you. Feel free to reach out in case of any help. And yeah, I hope that answers. And we are also looking at a retirement home kind of a. There are families now talking about it a little bit more often now, which is in terms of retirement home kind of a setup. But even there, not everything is taken care of. It's more like a facility for you at a later stage. You can move there, spend your life. But then there are also a lot of other elements that you may want to also consider, whether the society, the social circle that you are in, whether you would kind of Are you okay to kind of live there? The lifestyle could be different, social circle could be different, so then you'll have to also think of those elements, because again those are certain emotional parameters that you may want to consider when you're taking this call. But having said that, it's important to create these three provisions that I just mentioned. Talk to your planner or advisor, and make sure that you have enough financially to take care of most of this.
And Rohini, sorry for interrupting. One more thing which I think you need to do is about this liquidity thing that we were discussing. You see, because like I said, money was not a problem, but my father can't sign, my mother can't sign. Now what
Yeah.
happens? So
Yeah.
supposing today I can't sign, my husband can't sign, the money is there, my children may or may not have the kind of money to, tide over a time. So how does that work? Because, you don't want to sign off everything to your children also at this point of time. That is also, I don't think, very prudent. But at the same time, you don't want that your children should not be able to access the money when it is there to give care to you. So I don't know how one can engineer that, but I think that also you need to really think and see through.
Right, right. There is also another question, which is in terms of hope you have someone talk about success stories of senior citizen living, like Antara, medical needs, etc., with someone who has made a success of it. I have not gone through that yet, but I've seen there is an increasing, increasingly the people talking about it, like Nana Nani and some of these retirement homes which are kind of popular, but have not seen yet clients moving there. But we've kind of planned either for a rent in some of these homes, like staying on a rent from a later stage, or buying one, and then moving to there.
Rohini, I went to Antara to have a look,
Okay.
and to the Dehradun Antara, which was there when they just come up and all. So
Okay.
there are two things. Now, everybody who's bought over there, they're saying that it's very, very good living, etc., etc.
Okay.
But my take on it is that number one, it is extremely expensive, extremely expensive. And most of the people over there are not permanently living over there. So in the sense that they're planning for the future. So they have bought a place and then they're there. So I know a couple of people were there and then they're not there, in the sense that they treat it like a holiday resort, and they will go there and not go there. So the community which they're talking about is going to build hasn't really built that well. That is
Okay.
number one. Number two, what somebody was telling me was that he says, why would I want to go and live with only old people? Why? What we were talking about, the social this thing. He says it is all very good, facilities are all very good. But if everybody is going to be old, then I'm becoming old at my age only, whatever age I'm going in. So how do you interact with young people? How do you meet, new people? So that's also a challenge. If you go to the senior citizen homes, Antara is beautifully placed. They've done a very good job of it. Extremely expensive, extremely expensive. And then everything is plus, plus, plus. If you want an attendant, it's a plus. You want food, it's a plus. You want somebody, then it's a plus. So, as financial planning, if somebody is looking at that, then in fact, I went and looked at a couple of old homes. Somebody was asking me what I have been doing. So, with all these challenges, one was like, so, a very, very reasonable place costs you 1 lakh of rupees, where they give you one room for two people.
Hmm.
And I'm assuming that you need a certain standard. You know.
Yeah.
And I genuinely shudder to think that if I had to live in a room for the rest of my life, how would I do it? Right? However ill I am, I mean, if I can't even be moved out, or even if, so I don't know. So you really need to think this through, and
Yeah.
maybe, like you said, you think of retirement homes, and also maybe one could have a look at that and see what kind of a thing would suit people.
I think there's a suggestion, I guess, for you, and we'll close after this. So this said that enable electronic banking in one or two bank accounts and use it appropriately by having certain funds which get credited to it. I'm not sure if that's like a suggestion. Um,
No, see, the point is that again, you give your banking rights to your children. That means,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. That's what I was just saying. Is it very prudent to give it at this stage? What stage do you give it to them? So these are all questions that you need to ask yourself, right? Do I give all my banking rights? Okay, now we can leave certain, I think in one of your earlier seminars also you had said that all your passwords and passcodes, etc., should be there somewhere so that people can touch it. But I'm telling you, it's not easy. In India, it is very difficult, yeah. very, very difficult. And if they get to know that, you're like your parents are not well, and then you're doing things. So people, in fact, people came home to check, whether we were saying the right thing or not. So it is there. But yes, that's a good suggestion. And like you've always said that, keep it in a little secret black book, which people can access when they need to. Then maybe that will help. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, thank you so much, Urmila, and
Yes,
for sharing your journey
yeah.
with so much of honesty and strength.
Thank you,
And
Rohini.
thank you everyone for listening with the openness. So, if today's conversation kind of made you pause or reflect, and I think we hope that's a good place to start.
Hmm.
And do have family conversations. Ask all the uncomfortable questions, be it to your family or your planner and advisors, and start planning early and holistically. Feel free to reach out to us in case you need any support in terms of planning for some of these events in your retirement. Thank you so much. Thanks, you, Urmila,
Thanks,
for
everybody.
sharing.
Thank you for giving me this patient listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. See you in the next
Yeah.
webinar, guys.
Okay. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.